I'm Andrea Vermerlin, and today it is my pleasure to introduce John Hughes, Director of North American Sales for S2 Integrators, as your host today. John has over 20 years experience in helping companies of all sizes to implement software solutions that bring business value. I'd also like to introduce Satish Kumar, S2's GRC Practice Lead. Satish is a GRC expert, having implemented multiple GRC and security solutions over the last 15 years. He has a very dynamic session planned for you today. John, please take it away.
Thanks, Andy. As Andy had mentioned, my name is John Hughes with S2 Integrators. I would like to welcome everybody to the rapid deployment of SAP GRC Process Controls webinar today. The rapid deployment of SAP GRC Process Control webinar today will focus on the swift and efficient implementation of SAP Governance, Risk, Compliance, Process Control solutions. This session is designed to provide you all with insights into accelerated deployment methodologies and best practices for streamlining the integration within organizational processes. I want to share a little bit about S2. We are focused on business outcome-based models, methodologies, using 20 years of cross-industry SAP delivery experience. We have a system of global delivery centers providing round-the-clock support. We have a strong SAP GRC capabilities dedicated to both S4 and ECC, cloud or on-premise. We are an SAP certified partner offering packaged solutions and unique implementation accelerator tool sets. Today's agenda, we will be covering the introduction, which we've already covered. We're going to be covering the challenges in the compliance world. We're going to discuss what is SAP GRC. We're going to discuss the rapid deployment. Satish Kumar will then give us a demo. We'll discuss the investment of our prepackaged solution and rapid methodology. And again, we'll touch a little bit more on YS2 and all of our experience. And we're also going to be handling or sharing with you a case study, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. So the introduction, what are we trying to convey in today's webinar? Well, we're trying to show you the differences between the traditional GRC projects and S2's rapid GRC package solution project. Traditionally, GRC projects were overcomplicated. We've eliminated that complication with our turnkey package methodology. Traditional GRC projects are large capital investments. With ours, we have a manageable fixed scope. Usually in a traditional GRC project, there's long implementation times. Our prepackaged solution will have you up and running fast. And what that ultimately means, the difference between a traditional project having a slower ROI, with our package, you have an immediate value and return on investment. So with that, I'll turn it over to Satish, who shares some of the challenges to get us kicked off and into the demo.
Thanks a lot, John. Hello, everyone. So before we jump on to, what are the challenges, right? So I want to take a second and say, why do we need process control, right? Before we jump into why process control, we want to take a step back and understand what is compliance, right? Or why do we need compliance? So we need compliance for two main reasons. One, it could be because of the regulations of all the the countries that we operate business in. So it is either mandatory by law, or it could be because of industry standards. We are into manufacturing industry, for example. Then there are a lot of risks which come along with the manufacturing industry, right? And we would need certain controls and certain regulatory standards that we comply with is going to benefit the organization, right? So compliance is primarily because of two reasons. One, because of laws, or because of best practices. Now, in the traditional world, what are the challenges that we face, right? We've seen a lot of clients who are multi-million dollar clients, even multi-billion dollar clients, who are still stuck up with complex regulatory requirements because of all the business processes that they do. And what they do is they actually use Excel sheets, spreadsheets, even up till today, right? They use that to manage their risks and controls. Now, if you are using manual methods, of course, there's no way that you can automate your control testing or any process around that, right? And with that structure in place, the reporting is going to be a nightmare, right? At any point in time, if anyone wants to understand how good is my risk and controls, how good is my internal control standing, right? The management would not get a good understanding of the reports, right? And with that, if they would have to go and publish their financial statements, and along with that, attest that their internal controls is strong, the management would not have that confidence to do so. So this is the premise that we've seen clients today, and this is exactly where process control comes to help us. Right? So going on to the next one. So in this slide, what we want to talk about is the life cycle in process control. Right? So we have the document phase. So that is the phase where we document all the regulations. What are the regulations that we as a company want to comply with, right? We talk about regulations, we talk about risk, we talk about controls, we talk about all the organizations that within my company as a structure that we want to document within process control. Once you document those, the next step is to scope out what are the controls which would be relevant for my organization for this fiscal year. Right? As a company, I could be having multiple business processes that I'm operating in a particular company. Let's take S2 North America, right? As a company, I would have multiple business processes, but on a given fiscal year, I would choose to focus my energy and my effort on a particular business process. So those processes that I perform, I scope the corresponding risks and controls as applicable for this fiscal year. So if I'm focusing my efforts or my energy into manufacturing business for S2 North America for fiscal year 2023, then all the risks which are involved within manufacturing and all the controls which are involved within them would be applicable for me, right? Once I do the scope, then the next thing that we would do is to evaluate those controls in terms of the control design, in terms of the operating effectiveness. We do the evaluation of it. And if there are any issues that we face along the way, right? Process control offers you a very good platform where you can document all those issues. And those issues are something that can be remediated. So you capture the issue, you remediate them, and then make sure that you report on that so that when the external auditors comes in, they have complete evidence, right? There would not be any audit findings if you have everything completely documented. Now, with process control, we would be able to integrate with the transaction processing system, which is nothing but your SAP ECC or your S4 system, and we could automate your controls, right? Any controls that are manually being operated today can be integrated with the OLTP system, which is your ECC or your S4 system, and get the data from them and then process the control effectiveness. Now, the last phase is the reporting phase. SAP GRC Process Control offers a lot of out-of-the-box reports. We have dashboards. We have a lot of linear reports. We would probably take, a look at a couple of reports in the demo, right? This is how process control helps you as an organization to have all your controls and risks within one single source of truth, evaluate them, and have all those issues and remediations, documented here, and have control automation and have reporting out of it. So SAP GRC Process Control would be a single source of truth for all your compliance needs. Moving on to the next one. Process control's focal point is to enable the 3 lines of defense, right? So in all the compliance audits that we've seen for multiple customers, right? The majority of the problem comes in is because the process owner is still not aware of the risk that they are, they are dealing with. So we'll take an example of, a procurement buyer, right? So I'm into procurement, right? We'll take just one example as a process, as a control, and explain how GRC process control would be able to help them, right? So I'm a procurement buyer, right? My job is to make sure that I procure goods from all my vendors, right? Now, as a procurement buyer, there is in my process, there is a option for me to allow back posting, right? If I allow back posting, then what it means is, even if the period is closed, I could go back. If the back posting is allowed, I can go back and then post it for previously closed periods. Now, there is a risk in itself, because if I am able to do so, I'm going to create inconsistencies in the financial statements, and I'm going to create, I'm going to short my cash flow, because if I post it in the previous period, then the payment would be due very soon, right? So that is going to cut short my cash flow. So for all those reasons, the procurement buyer should never be posting to a previously closed period, right? So if I, as a procurement buyer, knows that the risk that is involved in doing so, I would not do it in the first place. So that is where, using process control, we could establish these 3 lines of defense. And the first line of defense being the process owners, right? Me as the procurement buyer, if I know that I should not be posting to a previously closed period, then I would, and if I understand what is the risk involved, then I would not be doing so. So what we do is, using process control, we have a functionality called control self-assessment or a control walkthrough in other ways. With that, we ask a series of questions to the process owners to understand if the process owner knows what exactly they are doing and what is the risk involved if they don't do as it is, right? So this is the first line of defense. Now, the second line of defense is usually the internal controls of the internal compliance team, right? Their main objective is to make sure that they study the business process. They understand all the risks which are there within this business process, and make sure that the controls design is covering all those risks appropriately, right? So we just spoke about the process owner, say the procurement department. Now I'm talking about, imagine I'm from the internal compliance department. So my job would be to go through all the business processes, talk to all the process owners, understand what exactly is happening in those processes, identify those risks, identify the controls, and make sure that the design of the control is strong enough that it mitigates the risk. And for that, process control offers a functionality called control design assessment, and using that, the internal controls team can build a robust control or can design a robust control. Right. So this is the second line of defense. Now, the third line of defense is the internal audit team. So they would be an independent entity within the organization, right? And what they do is they monitor the operating effectiveness of the control. So we design the control, the internal compliance team designs the control, and the internal audit team makes sure that the control is operated effectively. Are there any issues in the day-to-day operations? If we take the example of the same control that we spoke about in terms of the back posting, so the process owners knows what is the risk within the back posting. The internal controls team comes in and then they design the control with no room for error. Then the internal audit team would have to make sure that no process owners or no procurement buyer does any back posting, in the previously closed months. So that is exactly what the internal audit team does. And process control offers a functionality called control test of effectiveness, which is going to monitor if the control is operating effectively or not. So these 3 combined would establish a very robust 3 lines of defense. Now, going on to the next one. So this is just a snapshot of a process design, and in this case, again, we've seen first line of defense, second and third. All 3 functionalities are workflow-based functionalities, right? We want to just take one example and run you through how exactly would this happen in process control, right? And for this example, we have taken the second line of defense, and here we're talking about control design assessment. Like I said, this is like within process control, we have a lot of workflow-based functionalities. And the functionality starts like this, right? So we first schedule the control design, and in a minute, I'm going to show the same thing in the system. So you would be able to see, you would be able to correlate what I'm talking about now with what is happening in the system, right? So first we schedule the control, and as the internal controls team, I could be the internal controls manager, or I could be the internal controls analyst. I get the control, I get the list of questions, I determine if the design of the control is appropriate or not. Let's say I find an issue with the design of the control. The design of the control is not covering the risks that it should be covering as it is. If I find a control failure, then what I do, GRC Process Control offers a functionality where you can raise the issue. So if I do not have such capabilities, and I, in the end, if an external auditors would come in and catch it, that's going to be an audit finding, right? So right now, if during the course of the fiscal year, during my assessment, if I'm able to catch this issue, I record that in the system. So I create an issue in the GRC system, and I assign to the issue owner. The issue owner could be the process manager. So for example, the procurement manager could be assigned with the issue saying, hey, there is an issue with the control, so you got to go and fix that, right? And once the issue owner gets the issue, what they could do is they could have someone from their team go and fix the issue, and that would be a remediation plan. The remediation plan would be a list of steps to say, hey, these are the steps that needs to be performed to actually go and fix the issue that was raised by or identified by the internal controls team. Now, once the remediation owner completes the remediation plan, then it goes to the issue owner. The issue owner closes the issue, and that brings to the end of the life cycle of that workflow. So this is how all those, like the entire control design assessment, and including the internal controls team, the process owner, as well as the process team, is closely involved in testing the design of a particular control. Now, what we could do is, take a short demo of, what process control is and the control that I was talking about. So we'll take a quick few minutes to see that and then get back to the presentation. Now, let me share you the screen. So what I'm doing now is I'm logging in as the internal controls manager. So on the top right, you would see that I'm logging in as the internal controls manager. As a first step, I want to show you the master data setup before we start the control design assessment. So within the master data, the first thing that we want to talk about is the regulations. So what are the regulations which are applicable for us, right? So again, the regulations could be either laws like SOX or FDA, or it could be internal standards. So all those regulations that are applicable for the company can be documented here. Once we have the regulations, we then want to talk about the risk hierarchy. What are the risks? Like I said, if I'm in the manufacturing business, or if I'm in the procurement, if I'm in the shipping business, anything that are there as a part of my business process, I could document all those risks and controls here. Right? I could have my fixed assets here, so we could have the risk categories and all the risks captured in process control. Once we have the risks, the next one is to talk about all the business processes, right? So we have, finance, ordered cash, your tax, your record to report, and within each of these processes, you will have the corresponding controls. And there would be a one-to-one correlation or one-to-many correlation between the risks that we have to the process and the controls that we've loaded within process control, right? Now, like I said, the next one is the organization hierarchy. Now, once we define the risks and controls, we then want to define what are all the organizations, or what are the different plans, or what are the different entities within my company that we do business in. They could be either differentiated by regions, by plans, by company codes. However we want to report from a compliance perspective, we would have our org hierarchy cut out like that. So in this case, we have S2 corporate, and S2 corporate, by the nature of the business that they run, there are certain controls which are applicable for them, right? So what we will do is we will take the example that we were talking about, which is the monitor backposting of goods and invoice, right? Now, I want to show it in the system, like in GRC, what I'm talking about, and I'm going to show it in your S4 system, what this actually corresponds to, right? So if I open this control, so this is a control that we opened, and like I said, this control is all about monitoring the backposting of goods and invoice. There are a lot of control attributes that are going to help you identify or capture key information of this control. Right? If I go to the risks, this is the risk that this control is mitigating, right? So if the backposting is not is active and people start backposting, this might result in immediate due against the posted payments, right? And this is what I'm talking about. So if I go to the configuration, right? So against logistics general, and if I go to material manager, basic settings. So this one, maintain company codes for material management. So if I have this, and if I open the configuration for it, this is the place where I have the company code. And this is the spot where I can allow the posting for previously closed periods. If I select this, then the procurement buyer would have the option to post to a would be able to back post to a closed period, right? So this is the control that we are talking about. And for this one, what we want to do is to perform the control design assessment, right? So for us to perform the control design assessment, going back to the demo, we've already scheduled the control design assessment. And like I said, this is a workflow-based functionality. I want to, show you how the workflow would come into the system. I'm logging in as internal controls manager. I go to my home and open my inbox. So there is a workflow waiting for me already, right? And this says perform control design assessment for this particular control, which is my monitor backposting control in the organization S2 corporate. I open this. Now, control design assessment is, in the compliance world, you guys know about it. We have a list of design questionnaire, and the questionnaire needs to be answered. And at the outcome, we would know whether there is a failure in this control or not. So for the sake of this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to pre-fill some of these information. This first one is about the documentation to see whether the adequate documentation exists or not. So what we're going to say is informal or inferred one. There is not comprehensive. So I'm just going to create an issue out of it. So I'm just going to say that we do not have a complete set of document. So what I'm going to put it is documentation needs minor updates, right? The next one is validation, like how is the control activated and triggered. So I'm just going to say this is configured and manually executed. Okay. Right. The third one is the capacity to override the control. Again, these are questionnaires that we've seen some of the clients use, but in process control we can configure the questions that you actually use in your compliance methodology, right? So next one is the capacity to override the control. So I'm just going to say only with prior approvals. Like for example, this one is a configuration. So yes, if you have a particular change request and if you want to perform it, of course you will be able to. So I'm just going to put that. And the next one is the mitigation. So is this control your primary control? Is mitigating your risk? Right? Yep, this is my primary control. So it is directly mitigating my risk. Next one, relevance. How relevant is it for the financial reporting? Right? This is very well relevant because any changes to this is going to be causing an issue with my postings and have a direct impact on my financial reportings. Next one, list of the people who helped in this assessment. So as of now, I'm the internal control manager. As you guys know, like I've logged in as an internal control manager. I'm performing my design. So what I do is I always get in touch with the process owner and do it. So I'm just going to say, yep, I'm talking to the process owner, and I'm filling up this control design assessment. Next one, based on the above, are there any changes that needs to be performed? Yep, for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to say that, yep, we found some issues and we want to, do some documentation updates. So with that, what we do is we rate the control. So there are 3 ratings that we could do. Either we rate it as adequate or deficient if it has a low issue or a medium issue, or if I have a significantly deficient issue that I have, or in fact, a high issue that I see, then I would have to rate it as significantly deficient. For this demo, I'm just going to make it as deficient. And then I create an issue. So this is the issue that I want to send it over to the process owner and tell him that, hey, you would have to go in and then update in your update the documents. And here I'm just going to mark it as a medium priority, and in the system I'm going to search for. I'm going to search for a procurement manager, right? So the procurement manager is the process owner. So I'm going to have him own this issue and have this updated. Given certain instructions to say what exactly needs update. So this is what I'm going to submit, and then I click on submit. Right? As soon as I submit my workflow, what process control does is it sends out a notification to the process owner, and they get a workflow in their inbox. Now what we've done is we've logged in as the procurement manager in a different browser. So as you see, now I logged in as a procurement manager. Right? When I log in to my work inbox, I go to my work inbox. I already have a work item waiting for me, right? And the work item says remediate issue, and this is coming from the control design assessment for this control, which is the back posting control, and in S2 corporate organization. So I know what exactly the work item that I have and what needs to be performed here. So I open the work item. So I see what are the what is the control, what is the risk, and what is the issue, right? At this point in time, I have 3 options. I can either create a remediation plan and assign it to my teammate and have him go and perform the updates, or I can close without a plan or reassign the issue to someone else. For the sake of this demo, we'll just create a remediation plan. Give a start date, so let's give us a week's time, and to keep it simple, I'm just going to keep the issue or the remediation with myself as the procurement manager, so that I don't go through multiple screens. Otherwise, you could definitely assign this to someone in your team, so you could have multiple people involved and make sure that the correct person gets the work item and performs the updates. So since the remediation is also assigned to the same person, so I'm going to click on submit and close it. So as soon as I refresh my inbox, right, since I got the remediation plan to myself, I have the work item which says update remediation progress. So when I open it, let's assume this is the place where we come in and then perform the actual updates, the documentation. So I perform the update, and then I come here and then I click on complete. Yep. Now all the updates have been made. And do we want to close the parent issue as well? Yep, because the remediation is complete, then the issue is now complete. And I click on submit.
Satish, there was a question about notifications. Is that only done within the system, or can you be notified through email as well?
Great question, John. Again, whenever anyone within process control, has a workflow waiting for them, they will always get an email in their Outlook, and that would give us a link where we could go back and then check it. So in terms of what is the activity that is waiting for us, and once we get an email, you following that link, we can go into the GRC system, and a notification would be waiting for us in the inbox. Great question. All right. So this brings us to the end of what we were talking about, control design assessment, right? And the next thing that we want to talk about is the automated control testing, right? Like I said, in the third line of defense, we the internal audit team actually monitors the control operating effectiveness. Now let's say, since we have process controls, right, let's say someone went into the system and they updated the back order processing, like they allowed the back processing. So someone went in, they clicked on save, so which means they allowed it, right? And then they did the back postings, and then they did another change to overcome this, right? So I want to keep it clean. Now, if process control was not there, most of the internal audit team, the way how they check the system is they go into the particular configuration, and their primary focus would be to see, is the configuration not enabled, for example, in this one. But little they would know that someone might have already changed the configuration, allowed for the back posting, people might have back posted, and then they would have reverted this change. And when the internal audit team comes in, probably once a year or semi-annually, or even once a quarter, for example, right? When they come in, this configuration would still be inactive, which means the control would have passed from their perspective, but in the back end, someone might have turned on, performed the back posting, and turned it off. Now, what process control does is it captures all those changes. If someone did turn it on, someone did turn it off, every time the process control captures it. Now, what we want to do is, now let's log in as the internal audit manager. And what we've already done is we've kicked off the automated control. So the automated control, we could kick it off as a daily or a monthly or a weekly or a quarterly control. So the control is going to be running all through the day, right? Meaning, it's going to be running continuously. And as soon as GRC detects a change in the configuration, right, what GRC does is it captures this as an exception and sends it to the internal audit team. So if I were the internal audit team, I do not have to manually go in and check these configurations. All I have to do is wait for the system to do its job, and then once I get an exception, then I go in to understand what that exception is. And process control clearly shows that this is the exception. This is the person who did it, and this is the time who did it, and this is the change in the configuration that happened. And in a minute, let's take a look at it. So for that, what we want to do is we want to log in as the internal audit manager, right? We just log in as the internal audit manager. So you guys know, I'm logging as the internal auditor. And like I said, we already have the automated controls kicking in. Now that someone changed the configuration and changed it back, right? GRC would communicate with or integrate with your ECC or S4 system. And based on the pre-written business rules and the logic, the control exception logic, it reads that particular configuration. It finds that someone has changed it, and then it automatically sends an exception. Okay? So if you see here, it is an automated monitoring exception. So it says remediate this exception, which is coming from the automated monitoring for the same backposting control in S2 corporate. So when I open this, go to the evaluation and click on the results. I want to see what is the result that it brought in, right? If you see on 12/14, which is today, right? There is someone who has actually went in, the old value was null, meaning it was inactive. Someone activated it. And then in few seconds, again, we changed it from active to inactive. So the system actually shows who did the change. And this is nothing but the user ID that did the change, right? It gives you all those information. Who did, what time, what value, right? All those information is captured by the system and sent to the internal audit team. Now, internal audit team, again, these are the same options that we got in the control design exception as well, where, you know, if you want to treat this issue with a remediation plan or close it without a plan. So it follows the same process. So in short, your control self-assessment, your control design assessment, your control test of effectiveness, all these three functionalities are workflow-based functionalities, which are provided by standard SAP GRC. And on top of that, the automated control, which is going to help do the testing of the control automatically. The internal audit team doesn't have to go into the configuration to check what it is. They can just set, wait for the exception, and then once the exception comes in, they can investigate on why it is. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire workflow because it's going to be the same as what we saw in the control design assessment. I want to take a couple of minutes and then quickly show the reports. So I'm going to log in as the internal controls manager. Again, I want to just show one dashboard and one linear report. So if I click on evaluation status dashboard, I want to do it for SOX. Do it for S2 corporate. Right. So if you see here, this is one of the dashboards available within process control. It actually says how many controls are available in your, your organization, which is S2 corporate, and how many of them, for which we've not done the assessment. How many of them were done, and how many of them were closed, and within the closed ones, and closed and open ones, how many of them were adequate, how many of them were deficient, how many of them were significantly deficient. In each of these, I can drill down. All I got to do is just click on this pie chart, and I would get the list of all these controls, right? So like all the information in terms of, what is the status of my controls in each organization? Were they assessed properly? Are there any issues? What is the status of the issue? Is it closed? What is the status of the remediation plan? Is it closed? What were the comments? You would have all those good information captured within the system, right? And what this can be done is when an audit comes, all you got to do is just run the report, give the auditors, the external auditors, the dump of it, right? Because in a compliance world where you don't have an automated solution or such a good solution, you would have to again scramble through all your notes, all your SharePoints, your emails to find out what happened to this particular control back in January, right? With that said, let's jump back into the presentation. Right. So we just finished the demo, right? And And the next one that we want to emphasize is, this is the deployment methodology that we have, and how is S2 differentiating any other SIs in the market, right? So as you see, we got 5 phases. We've got the discover phase. In the discover phase, the primary deliverables for S2 would be to come up with a strategy document, right? How good or what is the strategy of process control in helping the compliance teams? And what we do is we work with the clients and then come up with an end-to-end process document, right? How does your control design works? How does your self-assessment work? How should your test of effectiveness work, right? And we also talk about your data and migration strategy, because what we do is we take the risk and controls from you, and we understand, what all data that you have. How do we transform them or migrate them from your Excel or your legacy tool into process control, right? For this, S2 already have predefined accelerators. So we already have an end-to-end project plan. We've got everything created, right? We've got an RTM, requirement traceability metrics. We already have a predefined workflow set for any functionalities within process control. So you want control design assessment? Yep, we've got the functionality. We know this is how the workflow goes, and we can take that design document to you and say, this is how it is. How good is it going to align with your company, right? Minor changes, perfect, done it, dusted, right? And the next one is the explore and realize phase. This is the place where we, bring your development system up. We configure that system, right? And we create something called as a configuration rationale document to talk about what are the configurations we did and why we did. Right? And in the development system, we do one round of data load to see how good the information that you had outside of GRC comes into GRC and how it looks like. Right? And for that, S2 has a lot of accelerators. We have a lot of macros that is going to transform your data from legacy into a format that process control understands. Next is the automated control exception document. So one thing that we want to highlight is we have about 60 automated controls that we've pre-automated. We kept it in terms, when I say 60, we're talking about across all the process areas, including business and IT. We have identified some of the controls that most of the clients have asked us in the past, right? We have the controls, we have the risks, we have what exception a particular control would target. Say, for example, the backposting that we just saw, we know that this particular configuration change is what is going to be driving that particular risk, right? So we already have that exception documented. We know what is a configuration, and then we make sure that like when we go to the client, we just go and ask if this is applicable for you guys. Then yes, we can straight away automate this control very fast, right? And then for all those people who are going to be involved in the compliance process, so we just spoke about internal controls manager, your procurement manager, your internal audit team, all the SAP roles for them, right? So we already have a predefined and a customized roles created for them. Now the next stage is the realize stage. This is the place where we stand up the quality system. So what the deliverables from S2 perspective would be to have the quality system up and running. We do one more round of data load, and we have the test scripts and the training documents. All of them we have created. We have a very good repository of them, and those would be our accelerators to achieve this. Next would be the deploy stage, where we deploy it in production system, and for that we already have a cutover and deployment plan. And then comes the hypercare process, where we transition from the project phase to the support phase. Right? So this is the methodology of our implementation. The next one is we want to just take a quick minute and talk about a case study. Right? So we actually helped a life science client. And the issues that they were facing was they had all their compliance done through a legacy tool that has no integration with SAP, right? Everything was manual, and it also had some security reasons, like security issues, right? So what we did, we migrated close to 1,000 risk and controls, in fact 1,000 controls from their legacy tool into GRC Process Control. And in phases, we automated 45 controls, right? And those 45 controls are a combination of business controls as well as IT controls. Right? And then the 3 lines of defense, which we just saw, we constructed them pretty robustly. And another thing that process control does is it integrates with access control too. There's a lot of advantages that comes with that. So we implemented that as well for the client. And then at the end of the day, whatever reporting needs that they wanted were all captured from standard reports out of GRC. Now, what was the outcome? Right? I'm very excited to share about this, right? From 1280 monthly man hours, they reduced 65% of that time, right? So it went down by 65% because of using process control, right? And then with process control, they were able to reach out to the business. They were able to make the business responsible for their controls, for their processes, right? The more we do it at the ground level, the less issues that the internal controls and the internal audit team would see in the future, right? Reporting, management got a real-time reporting. They were very, very happy about it. And the past audits, using process control, you could go back in future and then, just with reports, you would be able to get the list of all those data from your past audits. So overall, the client was very, very happy with very streamlined workflows, with automations put into picture, with great reporting. The client was really happy that they made a good choice of moving from the legacy tool into process control. So this is just one example that we want to show of a client who benefited out of process control. And the next one, John, do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, I get to share the good news, so I appreciate that. So the highlight, right? The highlight's there, but to me the highlight is a $60,000 prepackaged rapid deployment bundle, is what I like to call it. It's a way to start your compliance, risk, and governance journey. And with that, those highlights are that your risk and control matrix will be migrated to the SAP GRC Process Control. You'll have those 3 lines of defense that Satish had mentioned. Those would be automated or implemented. 3 workflow-based functionalities: control design assessment, control walkthroughs, and test of control operating effectiveness workflows would be implemented. And again, another one of the big highlights when you think back to where I did the comparison of a traditional to the S2 packaged solution, 12 weeks of implementation, right? It's such a great value on the return that you get. A couple other highlights is integrates directly to SAP ECC or S4. We're going to automate 5 controls as part of this package and project, and include at least 1 IT finance control with that as well. So if we go to the next slide, and then we'll come back to this slide because I think people will have questions from that. The value proposition, again, quick transition, the automation of internal control, compliance, and audit. This department of control, compliance, and audit is sometimes overlooked, or something that comes very late in the maturity of an organization when it should be at the forefront. But you have automated controls testing, all the real-time reporting, and then obviously the single source of truth, which is going to make anybody's life easier when it comes to the risk controls and their effectiveness. I reflect back on my days in finance. It used to be FDIC as opposed to SOX at the time, but what a project. So this solution, our experience, makes GRC a very manageable and a very manageable product with a very high ROI. So let's go back again to the price tag, right? Because I think before we get to questions and answers, I want to leave it here, but we will go to questions and answers. But again, we're in the age of a modern, educated buyer, and those of you in governance risk have probably been researching the cost of this type of tool. and I would hope that you would be very impressed with our $60,000 offering. So with that, let's open it up to questions and answers and see how everybody really feels, and go from there.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. If anyone has any questions, please enter them in the chat. In the meantime, we had a couple of questions that came in during your session. Satish, we had a question about a attendee who had a particular process that had been outsourced to a subsidiary. That subsidiary managed the process for many locations. Can process control support such a requirement?
Yes, that's one of a great question, because we actually did something like this for a client. So what we could do is we could have something called as a shared service. Like your organization could be a shared service. So for example, some of the procurement operations or some accounting operations could be outsourced, and they could be done for multiple companies within one parent company. So we could have them as a shared service, and any design that any design that they do, or any test of effectiveness they do, the results can be shared for all the organizations. So rather than all of the organizations performing, the shared service, they perform and they share the result to everyone. So everyone would be compliant. I hope that answers the question, participant. Yep.
Good. We had another question. There was, they'd heard that SAP GRC Process Control supports SOX 302 certification. Can you explain more about that?
Yes. So again, process control primarily supports most of your SOX requirements, right? So SOX 302, in fact, requires your CFO and CEO to attest that all my internal controls have been tested and they are up to the standards, right? So within process control, there is a functionality called sign-off functionality. Again, there are other functionalities which are outside of what we spoke about in this rapid deployment package, right? Just want to take a second to reiterate that. This rapid deployment package would be a very good start for you, and would give you the length and breadth of what you want to achieve within process control. But there are other functionalities, like sign-off is one functionality. So sign-off is a functionality which enables the CEO, the organization owners, to sign off, and then ultimately your CFO and CEO to sign off at the end of the fiscal year. So yes, process control supports 302 certification.
Okay, good. One more question here. Will implementing GRC will benefit in my optimize my user license?
Come again, Andy?
The question was, will implementing GRC benefit in optimize my user license? I'm not sure if that means that they're already including it.
Yeah, maybe if I understand the question, right? So for example, having if the question is more in terms of the license of using process control or using GRC, right? In that case, we've seen customers in the past where, like, one license, if you already are using your ECC or your S4, and then you're using your GRC as well, then I've seen customers that who have had a deal with SAP that it is considered as one license. So they do not have to procure a different license just for SAP GRC. And this is something that the procurement division within each company and the way how they deal it with SAP, that would make more sense. But again, like I said, we've seen just one license for one person across ECC, S4, and GRC. It'll be just one license.
Yeah. And I would also add that that's something that we would help you along with, right? We are your trusted advisor. So when it does come to licensing and conversations with SAP, we would be there with you to make sure that we've uncovered the right path.
Sounds good. One last question. Does SAP GRC process support policies?
Of course. In fact, process control has, pretty good functionality with policy management. So, using process control, you would be able to, document your policies, get them reviewed, get them signed off or get them approved, and then you could distribute this to all the people within your company. And also, there is a way for you to track if your, if the people working in your company, they understand the policy, right? So there are some acknowledgement methodologies. There are some quizzing ways where you can actually quiz and understand if your employees understand your policy. So for example, a HR policy, right? Using process control, you distribute this policy to all your employees and then ask them to, answer a survey or answer a quiz, and then analyze the response to see if your employees have a good understanding of the policy or not. If they do not have a good understanding of the policy, then you might want to see, what are the ways how you could, have some campaigns around it to, to educate the policy to all your employees. So process control has a very beautiful feature of that.
Excellent. I think that's it for questions. Oh, wait, we had one more. Are there country-specific policies available?
Country-specific regulations, maybe. Let me, I would probably see that it's country-specific regulations. Yep, process control, gives you the platform to have, multiple, multiple regulations be documented here, right? Say, for example, I operate in North America, then, I would have to comply with SOX. If I operate in Japan, I know, we have JSOX, right? Most of these compliance initiatives are, closely similar, but not the same, right? So in process control, you could have all those regulatory initiatives documented. You could, test the control for one regulation. And if the other regulation is closely similar to that, you can share the result with another regulation. So let's say if I want to comply with both SOX and JSOX, and it has similar requirements, then I perform one assessment or one test, and I share that result with the other regulation. So I'm compliant with both SOX as well as JSOX, but I'm just doing one testing.
Okay, well, that does bring us up to the completion. It's 11:57. Again, I appreciate everybody who took the time today to learn more about the GRC package that S2 has to offer. I believe in the final slide there, if we can pull it up, you're always free to reach out to myself, to Satish, or directly to sales at S2 Integrators. You can find Satish and I both in LinkedIn, and we really look forward to answering any further questions and maybe working with everyone in 2024. Compliance risk and governance is a big topic these days. So again, thanks everybody for joining. There will be a recording of this demo available that we'll be getting out on LinkedIn as well as to you all directly in case you missed something. But again, thank you, Satish. Thank you, Andy. And thanks to everybody for joining.
Thanks, everyone.